What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Epic Rides, brought to you by our friends over at Fisher Powersports. If you're looking for a dual sport or off-road machine, go check them out. I've put a link to their website in the description. Great bunch of dudes that work there, and I know they'd be more than happy to get you into your dream ride. Last episode, I told you guys I was going to do a review of my KLR 650. Then I rewatched that last episode and realized that I pretty well covered it. It's a KLR 650. It's a Gen 3. It's a fuel-injected 652cc machine that produces a screaming 40 horsepower and a beastly 39 foot-pounds of torque. If you're new to motorcycling or engines, that means that it's not super powerful, but it has enough torque to get you up a steep hill. I've talked about the ride, I've talked about the upgrades I've done so far. I don't know what else to say about it. It's a great beginner adventure bike and a great platform to Frankenstein into something that'll fit your needs. When I say beginner, I mean that it's not expensive. So if you're not sure if an ADV bike is going to be your bag, you can get into the adventure model for about 11K Canadian, or the base model for around 7K Canadian. So if you're living in the US and watching this, that's probably like $12 US all in for the adventure model at the current exchange rate. So should you buy a KLR? That depends on what your goals are. If you're a pro off-road rider who likes to charge hard through sketchy single track and hit jumps, I'd say no. If you're looking for a bike that can happily run up and down gravel roads and trails all day long without too much fuss, but doesn't like to necessarily leave the ground, I'd say go for it. Oh yeah, and it's a great commuter as well. It has plenty enough suspension to bop around the city, even if you live in Winnipeg, where the potholes are more plentiful and deeper than craters left after the Luftwaffe bombing campaign against the United Kingdom. To be crystal clear here, I'm not comparing the City of Winnipeg Public Works Department and its contractors charged with fixing our roads to Nazi Germany. That would be inaccurate. A far more accurate portrayal would be closer to the mob-owned construction companies in New York City, except that the employees in this case aren't getting screwed out of money, just the taxpayers. I feel like I bitch about this far too much, but it's just that I can't decide whether the province and city respectively don't care even one iota about ensuring our roads are upkept, or if they care and the people tasked with doing the work are mentally incapable of doing the job correctly. It's like every single employee and contractor tasked with the job collectively downed a mixture of morphine, Xanax, whiskey, and LSD, and were then handed the keys to the road fixing equipment. I'm not saying a poorly trained ground squirrel could do a better job, but who am I kidding? Yes, I am. Boo, Public Works Department of Winnipeg and the province, boo. If you live in Winnipeg or in Manitoba period, a KLR is the perfect vehicle to tackle our roads. Well, the KLR or maybe an Argyl Centre XT. Okay, now that I've done my due diligence on bitching about the pathetic and downright criminal state of the roads in this province, let's get to the meat of the program. This week, I made it my mission to explore the Prime Meridian Trail. Well, at least the parts you can drive on. The Prime Meridian Trail is a 116-kilometer long trail that begins at Grosse Isle on Highway 6 and runs through to Fisher Branch. The first 6 kilometers of trail to the south and then 3 kilometers by Argyl do not allow motorized vehicles, which is fine given that you still have about 108 kilometers of trail to play with. The trail is a haven for naturalists and boasts over 240 species of flowers, 170 species of birds, 31 species of mammals, 4 of amphibians, and 3 species of reptiles. Although sadly not one of those 4 reptilian species includes Godzilla or politicians. After a lovely ride up from Winnipeg where I was able to test the top speed of the KLR on the highway while trying to pass a couple of cars, and by the way, if you're looking at blasting past cars on the highway, the KLR is not the right bike for you. I eventually arrived in Argyl. Argyl is a small hamlet located in the Interlake region. It's part of the rural municipality of Rockwood and is about 30 kilometers from Winnipeg. Settled by Europeans during the 1870s, each newcomer was granted 160 acres of free land from the government. Well, by free land, I mean it was the first people's land, but details. They weren't using it. And by they weren't using it, I mean they most certainly were using it. However, apparently nobody cared what they thought, so screw them, I guess. I swear I'm not trying to make this episode or this channel about our criminal government or the atrocities committed to our fellow humans at the hands of said government or in the name of organized religion, but man, it's hard to ignore sometimes. I promise to try to do better, but only if we all promise to do better in how we treat others. As I was saying, the first settlers came from Argyllshire, Scotland, and named the district in honor of their former home. Quick shout out to Scotland. of which my family on my mother's side are originally from. So throw your kilts in the air and wave your haggis like you just don't care, or something. Currently, Argyl is home to about 994 people. It's a small community but very pretty. There's a general store in town along with a community center and a few other small businesses. My first stop was the general store. If you're going to attempt the Prime Meridian Trail, the general store is a good place to stop for a bottle of water or a snack. However, be forewarned that they don't accept debit or credit cards, so bring cash. Also, they don't have fuel in Argyl, so make sure you fill up somewhere like Stonewall. You can't just jump onto the trail right at Argyl, as I discovered. You have to head north on Meridian Road to Road 81 North. Just past the intersection, the trail crosses the Meridian Road and you can enter there. The Prime Meridian Trail used to be a rail bed, so don't expect a bunch of twisties. When you first enter the trail, you'll be greeted with some beautiful trees lining the route, and the surface is packed dirt and gravel. To start, it's easy riding and the KLR is perfect for cruising along and taking in the sights. In fact, this first section of trail may be the ideal place to get that brand spanking new ADV bike into the dirt for the first time. While the ground is firm, the surface is quite uneven, but not so much that you're worried about bottoming out your suspension or anything. Before long, you cross Provincial Road 322. This is where things start to get pretty interesting. The ruts get a little deeper, and the mud starts to crop up as the terrain beside the trail gets decidedly, swampy, I guess. Before long, you'll come to your first water crossing. Depending on the month you attempt this trail, the water could be low or dried up. However, when I went, the water levels were fairly high. After meeting a bunch of ATVers on the road, I followed them to the first water crossing where I stopped to see how deep it was. Turns out the answer was plenty deep enough. I kept left and went slow. The ground was firm under the water and it was fairly uneventful. Again, a perfect first water crossing for you new ADVers out there. As this was my first real water crossing with the KLR, my confidence was a little low given the absolutely shite grip on the stock tires, so I took it easy. The tires gripped the gravel under the water fine, and my new Alpinestar Belieze boots kept the water out as it surged over my foot pegs up to my ankles. The Alpinestar Belize boots are great low-cut adventure boots, plenty supportive, waterproof, and comfortable. My only gripe is that they're too short. That's not the fault of the boots, but the fault of the purchaser, moi, who was too impatient for the Corzals to come into the shop. The advantage to the lower boots is that they aren't quite as hot as the full-length boots, but a major disadvantage is that the edge of the boot top stops mid-shin. I discovered this disadvantage when I dropped the bike currently after my first water crossing, attempting to crawl over an exposed culvert. I hung the bike up by the skid plate on the top of the culvert, and they gave it too much throttle coming off. I went one way and the bike went the other, and somehow I managed to execute the perfect airborne spin kick into my handlebars, which left my shin taking the full impact. So yeah, I got a bruise, but it could have been worse. My only consolation was that I must have looked like Kung Fu Panda, except wearing full riding gear. Yeah well, for a second I got to channel my inner Jack Black, so there's that. The trail continues with several more water crossings and some slick mud. These next water crossings were deeper than the first, and I ended up filling my boots with water. Yes, the double-edged sword of waterproof boots. They're incredible at keeping water out and equally adept at keeping water in. Totally worth it though, as I was able to test the limits on how deep the KLR could swim. The water crossings themselves are totally worth the trip, as it's a great skill to build if you plan on spending any serious amount of time in the wet. After the worst of the water crossings, the ruts grew pretty deep, which allowed me to test the limits of the KLR's suspension. I bottomed out the shocks a couple times, but it was a total blast. I should also say here that my friends the Mitchell family brought their new truck out to go on an adventure. While they didn't attempt the water crossings, it was great to have someone waiting on the other side of the deep stuff in case I drowned the bike. After miles of hard riding, I popped off the trail at Road 113 North. It was getting close to dinner, and I had to get back to the city. So instead of carrying on the rest of the way down the trail to Fisher Branch, I bombed over to Provincial Trunk Highway 17 for a couple of short kilometers to Narcisse Snake Dens. If you've never seen Narcisse Snake Dens before, do yourself a favor and make the trip, especially by the Prime Meridian Trail. You get a killer day of riding followed by all the snakes. Garter snakes to be specific. Or Thamnophis sirtalis for those of you budding herpetologists out there. Garter snakes are cute little buggers that in the spring descend upon the Narcisse Snake Dens to mate. It's like the snake version of Dauphin Country Fest, but with less roofies and Coors Light cowboy hat wearing douche sacks. Also, I doubt John Fogerty or Dierks Bentley have played Narcisse, but I could be wrong on that. Anyhow, as I mentioned, exactly 1 gazillion garter snakes gather to bang at Narcisse every spring, and it's open for the public to go peep on them. Despite feeling a little pervy interrupting all that snake whoopee making, it's really cool to see that many snakes in one place, and definitely better than seeing that many snakes on a plane. We bumbled around Narcisse for a while checking out the snakes, and even got a close look at one that a park interpreter caught. Apparently, while they don't love being handled, the snakes that is, not the interpreters, although I imagine they're not too fond of being handled by strangers either. They're pretty chill about it once they realize that your hands are warm and you're not going to try and kill them. And they kind of relax and just let you check them out. Before long, it was time to say goodbye to the snakes and hit the highway home. If I had had more time, I would have carried on to Fisher Branch and the end of the trail. But that will have to be a video for another day. I'll likely make the trip soon though to see if the second part of the trail is as fun as the first. Well, that's my adventure from Argyl to Narcisse via the Prime Meridian Trail. As I said earlier, it's the perfect trail to get your bike dirty on if you're new to adventure riding. And if you're an old pro, you'll still enjoy the challenges, just likely at a much higher rate of speed. I really hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, please take a minute to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hammer the little bell icon so you get notified when the next episode comes out. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and remember, not all adventures have to be thousands of miles away. Simply pack your bags, start your engines, and explore your own backyard. Peace.